Oh, it is a July 1st meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
nice.
but there's one in June.
Long time since we've seen
I know, we haven't crossed over.
Well, okay, so I'm on June 5th, so,
Yeah, that's second.
Yeah,
meeting in
I think-
June.
I
It's
think
the
that-
18th.
yeah.
And luckily,
I'm so
Julie-
lucky. Oh, well. I'm so lucky. But this time next year I won't be on the board, right, on the commission, right? That's correct. Hi, Graham. Yeah, we are. Remember we had that 20-minute training
We
before our
did.
first meeting?
Jen, a long time.
Yeah,
6 years goes fast, right?
5 years. Yeah, it's been
Oh, it's
5
been
years.
fun.
Yeah.
Wait, Gary, does that mean that you're like? Or,
Yeah, Ann and I, this is, our
They're
last
on-
one was a couple of weeks ago.
They're on,
Yeah.
yes, they're on borrowed time.
that makes sense.
They're loaning now.
You're just.
Their time to us now.
So I know Larry's not coming. Erica also not coming.
Seemed like it was gonna
It could well be. If
Yeah,
the mayor does what he's supposed
I
to
think
do.
we should nominate Larry and Erica.
That makes sense.
Since they're not
Why
here.
not get her? Sure.
teaches me.
So we do. Okay.
Well,
There's voting for the new chair and vice chair today. There'll only be 3 of you that are actually.
that's right, active.
No, I was kind of debating if we should wait, and then I was like, I don't know.
No,
when.
actually, there'll be 4. There'll be 4 then,
Eric, are you ready?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We're-
which means if you have a different candidate, you could actually.
And
Not
none
here, you
behind the
get
scenes
elected,
stuff.
that's how it
All
works. For those not.
We're not allowed
right,
to
right,
lie.
okay, gonna bring the meeting to order. Enough tomfoolery, you two. Okay, the Landmark Preservation Commission meeting of May 7th, 2024 is now underway. We welcome to all of you here in person and it is 1 p.m. Welcome to everybody here and welcome to anyone who is joining us virtually. The first thing we do is introduce ourselves. I will introduce myself. I'm Julie Johnson. I am a historic preservation project manager and I was nominated by the community at large. Graham?
My name's Graham Johnson, also a preservation project manager, nominated by the Denver Planning.
I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect and was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Hi, I'm George Dennis, retired law enforcement nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and a developer nominated by the American Institute of Art.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
Great, thank you, everybody. The first item of business on our agenda is audio tips for our virtual participants. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop, laptop, tablet, or whatever mobile device. Click audio settings to bring up an additional menu, add a background noise suppression. Test your speaker and microphone, adjust their maximum output volumes. For presenters or public commenters, when it is your turn to speak, to mute or unmute, you can click on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Expanding the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options, like you can select your speaker and microphone devices, test your microphone and speakers, adjust their maximum output volumes. If you still have audio challenges, we suggest you switch to your phone for audio. All right, commissioners, the first item of business is the meeting records for approval for the meeting of April 16, 2024. Does anybody have any concerns, any corrections with said meeting minutes? See a lot of shaking heads. Do I hear a motion to approve said minutes?
Madam Chair, I will move to approve the meeting record for April 16th, 2024.
Second?
Second.
George has seconded. Thank you, Graham and George. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting records are approved as presented. Thank you, staff. All right, the next item, at the beginning of every meeting, we like to reserve 2 minutes for any public comment. And these are public comments that are not specific to any of the projects that we will be discussing later in the meeting. It's just generally historic preservation in Denver in general. To speak, you can click the hand raise button in Zoom, or if you got your phone, you can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand. Our email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having difficulty with either hand raise option. Do we have anybody there virtually that would like to make just a random comment about historic preservation? Doesn't look like it. I'm sorry. Anybody here would like to make just a general comment on historic preservation? All right, then we will move on to our public hearings. So we have public hearing.
We have no slide for this as.
We have no slide for public
Yeah.
hearing.
As you just need to set it today.
All right, so what we're doing today is setting the dates for two public hearing projects. The first is 2024-LMDEMO-097 at 1600 East Colfax Avenue in Wyman. The second is 2024-LMDEMO at 098 at 1618 East Colfax Avenue, also in Wyman. The recommendation for both projects is to set the public hearing for June 4, 2024. Our staff person is Brittany Bryant.
I don't have anything to follow up on that. We're just following through our notification process for demolition of a contributing structure.
Do we need separate motions for these? Probably.
Probably,
Yes.
I would say so. So then if I could have a motion for 2024-LMDEMO at 0-097 at 1600 East Colfax Avenue.
Madam Chair, I move to set a public hearing for June 4th, 2024 for the property at 1600 East Colfax Avenue.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Graham has seconded it. Thank you very much. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, we have set the public hearing for June 4th, 2024. All right, on to project 2024-LMDEMO-098 at 1618 East Colfax Avenue. Do I hear motion to set the date?
Madam Chair, I move to set a public hearing for June 4th, 2024 for the total demolition of the property at 1618 East Colfax Avenue.
Gary, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Graham has seconded. Thank you. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Alrighty, the public hearing for 2024-LMDEMO-098 has been set for June 4th, 2024. Alrighty, then we move on to the consent agenda. These are routine design review items recommended for commission approval without discussion. Applicants with items passed on the consent agenda should coordinate separately with their landmark preservation staff to receive a certificate of appropriateness. There is no public comment for consent agenda items. I will announce the consent agenda by address. I will ask if the commissioners desire to remove any items from said consent agenda. The commission members can announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest on any of these items, and then the commission will make a motion and vote. All right, the first on our consent agenda list is 2023-ZLAM-158 at 3611 Zunai Street. The second is 2024-TAXC-002 at 516 Ogden Street in the Alamo Placida district. The next is 2023-TAXC-006 at 101 Gaylord Street in the Country Club district. The next is 2024-TAXC-005 at 1928 East 14th Avenue in the Wyman district. And the final is 2024 TAXC-004 636 Clayton Street in the Wyman district. All right, commissioners, are there any concerns? Anybody want to pull anything off? Okay, I see a lot of shaking heads. All right, are there any ex parte or conflicts of interest? No? All righty, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda, Nick?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Nick. Second?
Second.
George has seconded it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Okay, great. We have approved the consent agenda as presented. Again, thank you very much, staff. All right, that,
Excuse people, they're here for the consent agenda.
If anyone is joining us virtually or here in person to represent anything on the consent agenda, you can leave the meeting now. Just get in touch with your staff person to get your COA. You're welcome to continue to join us, but you do not have to, because we are moving on to the design review projects. Alrighty, the design review process is this. I will announce the design review items on the agenda. Commission members can announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest. The staff will introduce the application and make a recommendation, and commissioners can question the staff. The applicant presentation is limited to 10 minutes. Commissioners can question the applicant. After that presentation, there is a public comment period, and anyone from the public that wishes to comment will be given 2 minutes. If you would like to speak regarding a specific project and you are not part of that applicant team, please click the hand raise button. For those calling via phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. If you're having difficulty with either hand raise option, email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number. Staff can clarify if necessary. The commission will deliberate and the commission will make a motion and will vote. Also, it's important to note that the commission can only consider information that was included in the application materials on the LPC meeting website. All right, to that end, our very first project today, we have two. The first is 2019-COA-280 at 2650 Wilton Street in the Five Points District. Brittany Bryant is our staff person.
So our first project of the day is for revisions to a phase 1 mass form and context approval for an addition to the historic Rossonian Hotel in the 5 Points Historic Cultural District. Here you can see the existing floor plan of the Rossonian. This is arguably the most important historic building in the 5 Points Historic Cultural District. It is the tallest historic building within the district, and it does have a few non-historic additions that will be demolished as part of this project scope, which you can see in this darker kind of beige. Those buildings were approved for demolition in 2019 and earlier, and then the site to what we would call downtown south has also been redeveloped and is the Hooper. And although these two projects are not connected constructionally wise in terms of phases and eras, they are integral to one another as a cohesive project on this block. So as part of the changes for the Rossonian will be reactivated as a hotel, and the hotel space will be principally in the addition that is located to the south of the historic Rossonian. As you can see here in this floor plan, the Rossonian itself will be reactivated as the hotel lobby and a music venue. So I'm principally going to focus on the changes and revisions to the approved phase 1 from 2019, as they are very minimal. However, staff did feel that there were some massing changes that did merit further discussion on this project, principally along the Washington Street elevation. So right now we're looking at the Welton Street elevation, but there are no changes to the upper story of this building. So these upper stories are the same. The changes are primarily focused on the building base, and they're very minimal on this facade. So one of the big changes to the building is that the applicant is proposing to remove the entry doors in this bay here of the new addition. Originally, this was going to be the hotel entrance. However, after reconfiguring the project, the hotel entrance is moving into the historic Rossonian and will reactivate the Rossonian building and will be accessed off of Washington Street. There are no changes to the bay pattern and proportions of this opening. It just no longer has an entry into that space. Additionally, on floors 2 and 3 of the addition building base, the window proportions have changed minimally on the second and third floor, as you can see in this inset image, which shows the prior configuration and then this proposed configuration before you today, in which the windows did get a little bit larger and the solid to void relationships did change minimally. Those solid to void relationships do pick up on elements from the Rusonian. For instance, there is a mullion on each window that aligns with the historic sill height of the Rusonian windows. The window head heights align, and then the proportions of the openings are also based on the proportions of the openings on the Rusonian building. So those are the major changes along the Welton Street facade. Along Washington Street, here is the primary entrance to the new hotel space, which again is in the historic Rusonian building. The storefronts along this elevation and along Welton Street of the Rusonian are non-historic, but the opening proportions are original. The original opening proportions will remain. The applicant will just be replacing the non-historic storefront glazing and reactivate the Rusonian with an entrance into the Rusonian Hotel for this new hotel structure that is being built. The massing for the new addition did change on this elevation. So previously the submittal for the building base had 4 bays. It has now been altered to 2 bays, more to match what is occurring on the Welton Street elevation. And again, those same opening solid to void relationships that you see along Welton Street are being replicated here along Washington Street. This bay here, which it is difficult to tell because this is a triangular site, but this bay here does start to turn the corner towards the alley. In the prior submittal, it did have balconies incorporated. The applicant has eliminated those balcony configurations and is just doing glazing configurations that match the proportions approved for the upper story already on this new addition. So here we just have some renderings or some elevations to show the proportioning and patterns that the applicant studied more following the 2019 approval, showing those rhythms and bays that they're picking up on for their redesign of the building base for the addition to the Rusonian. So you can see the solid relationship on the new addition matches the solid relationship of that of the Rusonian. It does have some of its own patterning, but generally staff find it harmonious and contextual to the historic Rusonian, and it continues those horizontal and vertical datum lines that are encouraged within the 5 Points Historic District. Additionally, there is a transition piece between the contributing building and the new addition, which is this glass element here. And the 3-story building base is subordinate to, but compatible with the height of the Rusonian building before it transitions into a taller building. And again, the 5 Points Historic District historically was a 3-story district. It was zoned to CMX 8 and 5. And so we do have much taller development than our historic buildings in this district. So I just have these elevations in here for other portions of the building. However, as nothing has really changed from the previous 2019 submittal for these elevations, I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing them, but I did want to include them so you have a total elevation view of the Rusonian. But essentially the corner of the Rusonian will be restored. This is the north facing corner of the new addition. It does minimally cantilever over the Rusonian as the 4th floor is set back over 20 feet from the primary facade, again matching that upper story setback that is required in the 5 Points Historic District. However, it's set back over 80 feet from this corner element, so while it looks very visible in elevation, in perspective it will not be that visible. And then just the alley elevation, showing that the articulation continues all the way around for this proposed addition to the Rusonian as required by the 5 Points design standards and guidelines. So here is a street view of the I guess the east side of Welton Street. We have the Lydian, which is development that occurred while the 5 Points design standards and guidelines were being developed. And then we have the Hooper, which was approved post design standards and guidelines. And then again, as I said, the Rossonian Hotel and the Hooper are not necessarily, structurally connected or, but they are integral to supporting each other in terms of parking and things of that nature. So you can see how the block where the Rossonian Hotel sits will be completed out with this proposed addition where non-historic buildings are currently sitting that again have been approved to be demolished by the commission. So again, major changes to this building are on the building base. The upper stories have not changed from the 2019 approval, and if the applicant wanted to move forward with the 2019 approval, they could. Just some renderings showing what this new addition will look like and how the street will be activated. Most activation will occur along Washington Street where the hotel entrance will be and a patio. And the reason for that is the light rail does run in front of this property and it's very difficult to activate the Welton Street elevation due to the narrow sidewalk and some of the limitations of the right of way due to the light rail, but there is entrances into the historic Rossonian, and also the Hooper's primary entrance is just to the right of the entrance. And in this space, the restaurant will be located, so there will be engagement with the interior with the street exterior, even though there's no longer an entrance. And then a kitchen bakery space here that will again engage with the storefront and activate that sidewalk along Welton Street. So staff are recommending approval because we feel that the changes to the mass and scale did merit additional review by the commission, but still achieve the overall goals of the 5 Point standards and guidelines, and generally speaking, are compatible with the prior development and the massing and articulation patterns of the historic Rossonian building.
Brittany, thanks. Commissioners, do you have any questions for?
I have a question, Brittany. So the guideline 5.3 says sites with frontage along Welton Street shall orient primary building entrances to Welton Street to promote the pedestrian environment. And that seems to be in conflict with the discussion that, and I don't know if it's a guideline issue or how that is, how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot internally about this with staff and the hotel entrance shifting from Welton Street to 5 Point, or not 5 Points, to Washington Street. We felt that, you know, the Rossonian does have an entrance on Welton Street. It has this historic entrance here. However, really the primary entrance was at the corner. And we also debated the fact that the hotel entrance was originally planned for this new addition, and now it's shifting into the actual historic building. We felt that activated the historic building a little bit more than the prior submittal, so that's why we were recommending approval of it, because it was engaging with the historic building a little bit more. And as this is the most historic building within the district, we felt that was an appropriate change. And then also, as I said, you know, the Hooper does have entrances in it. So the Hooper does have activated entrances. The primary entrance into the Hooper residential space is right here. So, so just right here beside this new massing. So we did feel that this street was still be activated and have, you know, community activity on it, even though those entrances were shifting away from Welton Street, but it was a pretty significant debate among staff.
Thank you.
Okay, that's fair. Anybody else? Question for Brittany? Okay, then let us move on to the applicant presentation. You can come have a seat here. Anyone who is speaking, if you could begin your 10 minutes, and it's 10 minutes, all of you together. If you can- Oh, yeah, see you. And then if you could begin your 10 minutes giving us your name and address for our records, that would be great. I'll have to do it for you.
All right, I'll start. My name is Brad Gassman. I'm with Crane Architecture, 2490 Welton Street.
My name is Matt Mueller. I'm with Palisade Partners, 2700 South Broadway. I'm the Director of Design and Construction for Palisade Partners and representative for the development team, which also includes 5 Points Development.
And Crane Architecture, 2490 Welton Street.
Right, I have a few slides here we'll run through really quickly and really focus on kind of the 5 areas that we changed. Really appreciate the time to get a chance to get this project in front of you all today, and I appreciate Brittany's help and assistance kind of pulling things back together, getting the project back on track. So just kind of high level overview again, you know, Brittany went into a lot of this, but obviously the Rossonian is a contributing building in the 5 Points Historic Cultural District, located at the corner of really the intersection of Washington Street and Welton Street, so kind of the heart of 5 Points. The building is on the National Register of Historic Places. As Brittany said, in 2019, that was the last time we were before the commission and had approval for phase 1, mass and scale. Following that, during the pandemic, project went on hold, and we've been working with the development team for about the last 6 or so months, trying to get things back in order, getting back through the entitlements process, and that's why this is one of the first stops along that path that we're having with you. Just kind of a high level overview again of the project. We have new construction of an integrated addition, which is going to be an 8-story addition next to the historic building. Historic structure will be rehabilitated. Programmatically, on the ground level, we have a restaurant, a music lounge, and a hotel lobby. The upper levels, there's 90 key hotel guest rooms. And in the lower level, we have a hotel event center. Can you go to the next one, please, Brittany? Didn't change yet.
Oh, it did.
Did you mind? There we go, that's perfect. So I'll start here and kind of walk through, this will be kind of the start where we'll talk through the 5 areas that we changed. Just to kind of give you the high level, the 5 areas that we changed were the 4th floor. So originally the 4th floor had a restaurant. Now those have turned to guest suites. The hotel lobby, as Brittany said, was located on Welton, is now moved to Washington Street. We've updated the window fenestration on the addition, so the level 2 and level 3 of the addition. And then we've reconfigured the building base along Washington Street, so that's the addition. And then we removed the integral balconies. So staying on this slide, this really shows you kind of the before and after of the big programmatic changes that we've made on the ground level. So the image on the left is the previous approved, and the image on the right is the new. So really what we were able to do here is we brought the kitchen inboard. Originally the kitchen was along Washington Street. We brought that inboard, and that allowed us the opportunity to get a lot more activity in the historic building itself and then down along Welton Street. So the kitchen and the restaurant extend all the way down Welton Street, and at the very end there's a exhibition prep kitchen with windows out to Welton Street. By bringing the hotel entry around to Washington Street, we were able to get kind of dining and the bar area kind of all along the glass. So the historic building doesn't have that blank void of a kitchen space in it anymore. Programmatically, it's a 150-seat restaurant. The entry is located at the chamfered corner that does face out to Welton Street. So that's the historic entry to the building. The overall restaurant fronts Welton, creating a clearly defined street edge and ensures that the building activities are visible from outside. So next slide, please, Brittany. So this is, before and after, and we'll see the updates kind of as we slip through these, but it's really focused on the infill levels 1 through 3. So next slide, please. That's great. So this really shows you how we've kind of studied the historic and brought a lot of those elements into the new building. So again, all the header conditions, window openings align, the cornice lines align, and we took patterns from the historic building, the void and solid relationship, and we brought those over into the new building. So between the second and third floor, we simplified those openings based on the proportions that we see in the historic building. And then kind of the same on the base, we've just kept that 3-story bay, which is on the historic building, brought that over and just treated that the same way we had previously. The only difference on that ground floor is the entrance was removed. Right, next slide, please. So really, this is just a nice slide that kind of shows how it all comes together and how the streetscape is very continuous. And you've got a lot of glazing along that street edge, and it creates a very strong adamant pedestrian realm. So moving on to the next one. This is over on our Washington Street side. So, you know, it's really picking up on a lot of the same massing techniques we used on Welton Street. So we'll see that as we talk through the base additions. So if you want to hit the next one, please, Brittany. So again, we'll focus on 3 areas of change. So the tower, we removed the balconies that were there at one time. At the base got wider at the addition. So we had a 25-foot base. It increased to 28 feet. And that was really driven by a couple zoning requirements for activation along the street front of Washington Street, and also to get utilities in that we need to get into that back corner of the property. And then the entry of the new hotel will be located where that existing opening is on Washington Street. Next slide. And again, this is the patterning that we've studied and brought into the addition. So again, it's picking up on the solid void relationships that exist on the Rossonian, bringing those over into the new structure, keeping the new structure very simple, so that the Rossonian really becomes the primary focal point. Just in summary, just here you get to see the Washington Street side again. You know, on the Washington Street side, the balconies were removed, the building base was reorganized, and the hotel entry was moved from Washington Street to allow for vehicle drop-off and avoid pedestrian and train conflicts along Welton. Overall, these small updates to the original approved Phase 1 mass scale submittal strengthen the compatible nature of the infill addition and help preserve and celebrate the architectural character of the Rossonian. So with that, this is the next slide. That's it. So just a quick update of where we are, really focusing on the areas we changed. Before I ask questions, is there anything that I missed that you guys would like to add?
No, I would add that the common, we had the same struggle with hotel entry, and there's to activate on along Welton's big needle with the restaurant and bringing that around, and the ability to actually have an active drop-off area in front of the hotel entry, it drove us to that. It just makes more sense. You can ask engineering as well, they agree with that. But so we thought that it actually is a nice kind of well, we got to reactivate that side of the Rossonian on top.
All right, any questions?
The door conversation. It does look like the restaurant will still have an entry from Welton, or is that going to be blocked off based on your floor plan?
So all the doors will not be operable, but they will all be replaced per the current design. So we will maintain those.
Got it.
Other questions or applicants? None?
No.
Okay, well done, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Then we will move on to the public comment. So public comments for design review. Everybody is given 2 minutes to make your public comment. If there's anybody here, if you guys would take your seats, that'd be great. Thank you. If anybody here in person would like to make a public comment, you can come and sit here and we'll give you 2 minutes and we time it obviously, so you don't have to worry about that. And then virtually, we'll get to all of you who would like to make a comment virtually. Let's go with the, let's see. So if you are joining us virtually, you can click the hand raise button in Zoom. You can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if you're joining by phone, or email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having trouble with that. All right. First of all, let's start with anyone here in person that would like to give a public comment. Okay, well then let's move on to the virtual. That was easy enough. I see Keith would like to join us. Hello, Keith.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, name and
Great.
address and then 2 minutes.
Sure, thanks so much. Keith Pryor, 2418 Champa Street, currently the design review chair for the Five Points Cultural District, Historic Cultural District. So this is great to see this project be revived. Very excited to see this application back and with its updation that has occurred. It looks great. The applicant obviously has studied the void to opening and has definitely reconsidered that, and that fits much better with the historic Rossonian. The removal of the balconies was definitely something that was a concern previously to the commission. And so that's been addressed. The moving of the entrance to the Washington Street side definitely resolves a lot of conflicts that were going to be happening between light rail and cars and the entrance. So I think, yes, there are concerns with activation for Welton, but I think that given safety and other issues, given the new configuration and the placement of the kitchen and the activation with the dining room and the prep kitchen, I think that really enlivens the street experience along Welton Street and really solves that problem. So I definitely think that that was a good solution. So I'm definitely in favor of this and ask the commission to support this application as it's been revived, and look forward to it hopefully becoming a reality. Thanks so much.
Keith, thank you. Do we have anybody else? I don't see any other hands raised. Nobody else? Okay. Alrighty, then staff, do you have anything you wish to?
I do not. The light rail always creates an issue for every single
Don't we know it?
one of those developments that have occurred. They all have a lot of internal ramping too because floodplain issues. So I think it's probably a good thing that it relocated.
All right, commissioners, any other questions for Brittany before we move into deliberation? Then let us move into deliberation. Commissioners, what are your thoughts? It's been a while since we've seen this one. Graham?
I mean, I think I agree with staff's report. All the changes seem well within the guidelines and the logic makes sense for the entry sequence. So
I think the relocation of the entrance through the former, old hotel gives anyone who attends the new hotel a sense of the history and a sense of the what has gone before, and I think it's great. So,
George, thank you. Anybody else?
Agree.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve application 2019-COA-280 for new construction phase 1 mass form and context at 2650 Welton Street per design guidelines, infill construction design standards and guidelines, and site and streetscape design standards and guidelines, character defining features for the 5 Points Historic Cultural District, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information in the staff report.
Graham, thank you. Do I hear a second? Gary has seconded it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, it has been approved unanimously. Congratulations. We look forward to see more results from your project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And best of luck. All right, next on our agenda is 2024-COA-214 at 3229 West 23rd Avenue in the Witter Caulfield District. And Jesse White is our staff person. Jesse, take it away.
Just give me a second, I'm trying to turn on my
Of course.
camera. All right. So the applicant applied for a tax credit on this address for replacement of windows in November 2023. And while we were reviewing that tax credit application, we discovered that 10 windows on the property had been replaced without landmark approval. So the applicants are requesting retroactive approval of those replacement windows, 10 of the windows, of those 10 windows, and are requesting approval to replace one historic window on the side of the house. And it is the only remaining historic window on the property. So the applicants did replace those 10 windows with aluminum clad wood. And they do fit in with that existing historic wood frame with no filler. So they do fit that opening pretty well. And then they did change the operation style of 2 windows at the first floor of this structure, windows 5 and 6. They changed them from double hungs to casement windows. So Landmark staff are recommending denial of the application, citing guidelines 2.16 and 2.19. And I'll use the next few slides to outline our findings. So here is the site plan showing the location of those windows to be replaced. W6 and W5 are the casement windows, and then W11 is that last remaining historic window. So pictured here is the front wall of the house. As you can see, it's pretty well nestled close to the neighboring properties. So there's not a lot of visibility to the sides of the house, but you can clearly see the windows on the front of the house. The applicants did replace those to match the overall historic appearance of the windows. And as far as staff can tell from Google Street Views, they're pretty close in proportion and profile to the historic windows that were in those openings. And then you can see here some of the interior shots. And as I said, that historic frame is still intact, and the windows fit within that frame with little to no filler. And then here's the east side of the house. So this is where the most change has happened on this property. So windows 5 and 6, they're on the front corner of this property. But again, they're on the side where they are really close to the neighboring property and there's not a whole lot of visibility. And then window 11, which is on a stairwell. Staff would like to note the window 5 and 6, they replaced them with casements. The commission has in the past allowed for casement windows, but only in cases where they're for egress and if they mimic the appearance of the historic window operation. So they have like a faux meeting rail to kind of mimic that replacement. And I would note that these are located in a kitchen area and egress is not necessarily required for these windows. And then window 11 is, and I'll show some additional pictures of that. Staff didn't have a whole lot of photographs of that. So we were uncertain of the condition of this window. I will say I did work on the violation, or not a violation, I did work on the restoration of this property prior to the current ownership. And it was vacant for many years, and the windows, whenever I reviewed them at the time, were in pretty rough condition. So I wouldn't put it past these windows to maybe be beyond repair. We just don't have enough information in the current application, we felt. So here's window 9, again, fitting within that existing frame. And as far as we can tell, it does match the proportions, profile, and appearance of the remaining historic window 11 that's on this house. And then here are those 2 casement windows. They also have frosted glazing. We do have a guideline that does allow for frosted glazing on secondary elevations, which this is one. But again, you can see clearly that it is an operation change and completely changes the appearance of these windows. And then finally, here's that window 11. As far as we can tell, there might be some minor slippage at the meeting rail from the exterior. And then there's just general deferred maintenance for ropes and pulleys on the interior and a mechanism that is in poor condition. Those are all easily repairable items. And then moving on to the back of the house, we have two windows here. One is in a non-historic addition that was part of that previous restoration application that I reviewed several years ago. And then the other is in the gable end of the historic structure. On the back of the house, not readily visible. And again, those windows fit the rough opening with little to no filler and tend to match the appearance and profile of the remaining historic window on the structure. And then here we have the west side of the house, more of the same. So W2 and W3, again, were replaced with 1/1 double hungs to match as closely as possible those historic, the historic window that was on the house. So Landmark staff are recommending denial of the application, citing guideline 2.19 for W5 and W6 as they've changed the operation. And 2.16 and 2.19 for W11, which is that remaining historic window, as we don't feel we have enough information to support replacement.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Commissioners, any questions for Jesse? George?
Just to be clear, this is a contributing house?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
If the commission denies this application, it seems to me there, maybe I'm wrong, there are two issues. One issue is the tax credit and one issue is the work that has been done without prior approval. So just in a practical sense, what, I guess I don't know if I can ask this, but what would make this project approvable?
So two separate things.
Yeah.
There are two different applications.
Okay.
So if the commission were to approve the replacement of the windows, even the casements and the historic window in this current application, they could try and apply for tax credit, but we would not support it as it does not meet the Secretary of the Interior standard. So of course, the commission also reviews tax credit applications, but based on past projects that we've had and their need to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, it's not an application that staff would recommend approval of. So that out of the way, we'll go back to this application. Staff had to review this under the current window design guidelines, and those do not allow the change in operation for non-egress windows, even on secondary elevations. The commission does have flexibility to review this application, adding it and flexibility beyond the guidelines. Staff have to make the recommendation solely based on the guidelines and cannot support under the current guidelines approval of change in operation.
And then just to follow up, secondary to the change of the operation is the fact that they were changed without any review. We don't know this. There's nothing, in other words, you could do about going back in history and saying, we don't know whether the windows, the condition of the windows prior to their being swapped out. It's just a done deal, essentially.
Right. So we have very little information on the windows that were in there. We do have one remaining historic window, W11. And that's what staff looked at visually to see how closely the majority of these replacement windows matched. And they do appear to be pretty close in appearance and profile. They are using the correct aluminum clad wood material that we would support. The two main issues that staff had were one, that they changed the operation on W5 and W6, which isn't supported by the guidelines. And two, we don't feel like we have enough information on the remaining historic W11 to support approval.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That was untangling a lot of things.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions for Jesse? Gentlemen? Okay. All right, Jesse, thank you very much. Applicants, are the applicants here?
The applicants have a presentation too.
Okay, great. So are the applicants, they must be virtual? There we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Hi there.
Wonderful, hello.
So you will be given, you'll have 10 minutes to tell us about your project.
Okay.
At the beginning of that 10 minutes, please give us your name and your address. For our
Okay.
records. Thanks.
So my name is Danielle, and in the picture you can see our home. It's 3229 West 23rd Avenue. And I live here with my husband Blair, our two boys, Hayes and Graham, and our dog Bennett. We've lived here for a little over 3 years. We absolutely love our home along with the neighborhood. It's been really great because we take a lot of pride in our home. We love that it's historic and has, you know, so much history to it. And kind of all of our neighbors close by are on the same page. They take a lot of pride as well. And we've even had, you know, occasional passerbys compliment our row of homes and take pictures, which is pretty neat. We started the process of replacing the windows because they were all non-functional, let considerable amounts of air, dirt, and pests pass through. And we knew when we purchased the home that the windows were in need of being replaced, and that in order to meet historic guidelines, they needed to be kind of the wood or aluminum clad. And we knew specifically that you could not change the appearance of the front of the home. However, we did not know that a permit was required, which is kind of why we did it and then went on to ask for a tax credit. We didn't know until we got kind of like the violation notice on our home that we had done it wrong. As we retroactively started trying to get the new windows approved, we did speak to a lot of residents in the neighborhood and realized that many of them also don't know about the permit requirement. So that was pretty interesting to find out as we did that. And then when we replaced the windows, we just went about finding ones that were not only, you know, really good quality, but also had the same appearance as the old ones, including the brass handles and spool locks. We still do have an original window left, like Jesse mentioned, in the staircase. And other than that one, you know, having some damage and letting air in and out and all of that, like they look the same, which was important to us when we did it. If you could switch to the next slide.
Sorry.
Or I don't know if I do that. Sorry, I don't
No,
know.
No, I
no,
have
she-
it.
yeah, we got
Sorry,
it.
I stepped away from my
We got
computer.
Oh, no worries. The thing that we did change, as she mentioned, we made 2 windows on the side of the house, casement windows. We did this because they are in a 4.5-foot wide alley with both ours and our neighbors' exhausts directly outside of them. It's a safety issue because furnace venting pushes carbon monoxide outside so it can safely escape. But since both of our heaters run so frequently in the winter, and our alley, as you can see, is really small, having windows that can open is a bit of a hazard to the family. Also to mention, like, this alley, you don't enter either of our yards through it. It's kind of just a dead alley. So it is truly never used. Like, nobody is going to be going down this alley, I guess, unless we're getting work on the home or something along those lines. And then if you can switch to the next slide. So some pictures of some homes in the neighborhood. We love to walk the neighborhood. We do it almost daily with our kids and dog. One of our favorite things is seeing all of the beautiful details and traits of the other homes. And, you know, something we've noticed as we've walked is a lot of homes in the neighborhood, at least over 10 that we've counted, have casement windows visible from the street. You can see in the blue one to the left, actually, all of their windows are casement windows. And Jesse did mention that some of them were replaced before your current standards. But we just feel and wanted to kind of show that we think that the casement windows match the style and are in line with the homes in our historic neighborhood. And then I think we can go next slide. Oh, just another picture of some other really nice homes with some really good casement windows that are pretty. And then you can go on to the next one. Some more views of the alley. And so you can see like the view from the left and the view from the house to the right. You cannot see the windows from the front of the house. So on top of feeling like our windows do meet the guidelines in the sense that, you know, other than changing the operation, they have all the other, you know, matching elements. And they're completely out of view from any point in the front or back of the house. Truly the only way to see them is actually walking several feet into the alley. You can't see them if you just are standing at the front of the alley. And, you know, the fact that they can't be seen anywhere, and then also kind of the existing safety risks from carbon monoxide is why we're really hoping to have an exception considered for us. And then we just wanted to kind of lastly add, you can go to the next slide. I'm sure, I mean, I know that energy efficiency isn't what the historic district is focused on, but being part of Denver, I'm sure you know, like, that they're pushing for energy efficiency, and according to their, you know, 2022 energy guide, they want all new and existing homes to be net zero by 2040. Energy efficient windows are a really big part of that. We work hard as a family to be cognizant of our environment. We have our electric bikes that we ride whenever possible. We use our heat and AC as little as possible. And since installing the new windows, we've seen our Excel bill go down considerably. And we just feel that taking out, I think, you know, if it doesn't get approved, that we probably have to remove these casement windows, and taking out new windows, new energy efficient windows that did cost $7,000. I know that's not kind of your area, but it took us a long time to save the money to replace all the windows, a couple years, as you know, we did 10 of them. It just seems counterproductive to kind of Denver's long-term environmental goals. And so we just wanted to kind of touch on that. And just say, you know, we appreciate you taking the time to hear our side of things and how we feel about it all. And yeah, hope we can just get some consideration. And also, if you do have any suggestions of fixes to avoid full removal of windows or any other possibilities, we are definitely open to kind of trying whatever is necessary. And then that's all.
Danielle, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Danielle? Nick does.
Yes. The windows that you say pose a security risk on the alley, you refer to them as casements, but you say it's important that they're not operable. Are they fixed windows, inoperable?
Fixed windows. Yeah, the ones that we installed in the alley are the fixed windows.
Nick, I had the same question. The pellet cut sheet says that they're a direct set sash, so they're not operable.
Yeah.
It's just a single, you know, single sash, I think, in that. I had the same question.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions for our applicant? Danielle, I don't think you have any other questions. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Do we have anyone? So now we go back into the public comment. Anyone wishing to make a comment, we'll get 2 minutes to do so. Is there anyone here in person that wants to make a comment? Okay, all right, great. Is there anyone joining us virtually? I see one hand raised. If you could let the individual person in, please, Eric. Hello, are you there?
Michael, you should be able to unmute yourself and speak. Oh, I think you just muted yourself.
There you go. Michael, can you hear us?
Michael, unfortunately, we can't hear you. You might want to try to call in to the meeting. Should we move on, Nate? Nate,
Yes.
as we're having technical difficulties.
We can't reach him. He can't reach us.
I know it addresses it for the commission, but I can't recall if it addresses it for participants. We might have to postpone the matter until we can get connection with the applicant.
This isn't the applicant,
the-
this is public comment.
Yeah,
Oh,
Michael, is it possible for you to call us on your phone or, it's on phone.
They can also email us to it.
You can also email us at landmark@denvergov.org with your name and address.
has the commission already received a comment from this participant?
Do you have anything in the inbox?
I would suggest providing the email addresses you've done, probably both verbally and written, if you're able to get a hold of the participant via email.
Can we message them on
I
Zoom?
did. So Michael, I did message you in the chat. The phone number, if you want to call in, it's 839-701-6824. And then you'll need the webinar ID. It's 896-7703-2843.
You got something calling in,
Sweet.
star 9.
Yes, calling it, okay. Hello?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, Michael, hey,
Okay.
thanks, yeah,
Hey
you-
guys, sorry.
you'll get
I
two,
don't know why I wasn't.
yeah, it's okay.
Okay, but
Click is-
okay, great. So I am neighbor Mike. I live 4.5 feet from Blair and Danielle. And I actually moved in before they had moved in. And when I moved into this house, their home had been abandoned for over 15 years and was in very poor condition. And, you know, they have done just an incredible job of rehabilitating the home, and it looks, you know, fantastic with what they've done. And in regards with the windows, you know, I am in full support of what they've done. I feel like they have gone out of their way to try to get the windows to fit in with the character of the home. And from a design perspective, you know, I feel like, you know, especially regarding the windows in question on 5 and 6, I feel like they kind of have a negligible impact on the historic aesthetic just because of their location and nestled in between our two homes. But from a practicality standpoint, the windows that they've put in give us a little bit of privacy because we have windows that directly face each other. And before they put it in, I could look directly into their kitchen. They could look directly into my bedroom and bathroom. And, you know, my dogs, whenever I left the house, would be sitting at the window barking anytime they went into the kitchen. And now my dogs are, you know, much more relaxed. And I think, but I hope that you guys will approve the windows because they've just added a lot of value and have been very beneficial for not just them, but I think for us as well.
Great, Michael, could you give us your full name and your address for our records, please?
My name is Michael Ritchie. I live at 3225 West 23rd Avenue.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael. I'm glad you persevered with
Thanks.
us. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay, so-
sorry
No,
about that.
it's,
Bye.
it's okay. It's technology. Anybody else? I don't see any other hands raised. I think we're, all right. Commissioners, do you have any other questions for Jesse before we begin deliberation? Okay, then let's begin deliberation. Commissioners, Gary.
My concern, I mean, they did a good job of replacing the windows. My concern is, what about the next guy? And I think it's not just windows, it's like lots of ways that a unscrupulous owner can try to fool us. And in some ways and I'm not saying that's the case here, I'm just saying, this seems to me to be there's a good reason to approve this. I'm not in favor of getting the tax credit, but I am in favor of approving this, and whether or not windows at 5 and 6 are retained or not, I guess I'd like to hear what other people think. But my concern is, what about the next guy and the next guy? What about the guy who lets his landmark burn down because he really wants to do something else? So, I mean, that's kind of an extreme case, but we've seen in the past, people who say they didn't know they need to comply with the guidelines, seek a permit, do the work, and in many cases, we've rejected it. I think this is not one of those cases because they did do a good job of replacing the windows. Whether they needed to be replaced or not, I guess is something we can't determine. So that's something that we have to consider. I think I've said enough.
Okay.
I would clarify that each project is reviewed on a case-by-case basis and, decisions, while we like to be as consistent as possible in instances like this, it would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Additionally, like one of the main reasons they wouldn't be eligible for the tax credit is because we don't know the condition of the windows before, not because of the materials that they use. The operation might be a concern for the tax credit, but the bigger issue is the fact that we don't know the condition of the windows prior.
Yeah, I think going back a few weeks ago, we did another window replacement that had been done without a permit. And that one happened to have a pretty prominent facade front. It was a carriage house, not the original house. The windows were vinyl, they weren't clad wood. There were a number of different things going on that made that one hard to approve. I know we didn't have a vote that resolved it, so it got pushed to another date. But I think in this case, the fact that the windows are what would have been otherwise approved as a clad architectural wood window, and that the two kitchen windows are inoperable as opposed to a casement, right? And mechanical code and distance to intake and exhaust and everything is not our purview, but the fact that the windows are definitely not visible from the street. I think in that vein of a case-by-case basis here, knowing that the only difference that we probably would have requested had this come through would have been a simulated divided light or something similar for the appearance of a double hung. That it's effectively the same window on an elevation that you really can't see. This is just a few blocks from home for us, so it's on the dog walk loop as well. So it was empty and abandoned for the first 8 or so years we lived in the neighborhood as well. And it has been transformed, which is great. So I would say that given that clarification and the fact that things do otherwise match, I'm pretty comfortable with this. The remaining window that's there and historic is in the stairs. I think if it was to be resubmitted and for replacement through the right channels, that it could probably be justified, but it appears it could also be fixed in place perhaps and kind of restored in place. So not our purview to make that call, but I think with respect to the existing windows, I would be comfortable based on the fact that they generally do meet our guidelines. with this project as we're looking at it.
So we're all on the same page, that W11, that stairway window.
Yeah,
Is that part of the application to replace that now?
yes,
And then staff's comment was that there wasn't enough information about that condition of that window within.
correct.
So Graham, is what you're proposing is to approve the 2 fixed windows and then
I think,
resubmit the W11.
right, if, yeah, like an approval with the condition that W11 be removed for, for separate review by staff or something like that. I think that would allow.
I'd
for
absolutely support that as well.
It's in the Pella window order. I don't know if they already own that window and it didn't get installed or not, but that is something, for staff and the owners to chat about, so. But we've reviewed and approved a lot of very similar windows to these.
Any other thoughts, George?
What I have in front of me is a combination of some window replacement and some retroactive approval. Guidelines aren't guidelines unless they have influence on the projects, and therefore, what's in front of me, I would support staff in denial just until we can make a better decision about the windows upcoming. As far as the 10 replacement windows go, smart enough to ask for a tax credit, they should have known about the landmark district and the requirements. So I'm without any conditions, I'm for denial.
I have to say, I'm kind of with George. There seems to be an epidemic in this neighborhood. They're walking around and they're looking at all of the windows in this neighborhood that have been replaced clearly without landmark review. And there are contractors working in this neighborhood who should have flagged it. I mean, if there was a major renovation done on this property, it's a little surprising to me that they didn't have to submit, the contractors didn't have to submit for a building permit, and this wasn't flagged at the time. I don't quite understand.
We reviewed the
So
project,
I can explain
Oh,
that.
you moved.
but the windows weren't part of the project at the time.
Oh, they
I
weren't
think
part of
was
the project. Okay.
Also that this is a common violation for us because you do not need a permit in Denver to replace your windows unless you're in a historic district. And a lot of times people do ask the permit office and they are given incorrect information by the permit office. Now, whether, that's great or not is a different issue, but it is a common reason this is a violation for us.
Okay, so here's another question for staff. Should we go with the recommended motion to deny? Then what is the option for the homeowner, for the applicant?
The applicant would have to revise their application based on commission deliberation, and then they could resubmit. It'd have to be a substantially revised application though, in order to come back before you all. And honestly, if they revised it to where they were double hung windows, if the commission was favorable towards replacement for the other windows on the property, we could potentially, I'll retract that because it is replacement of more than 3 historic windows, so it would have to come to commission. So I retract my comment.
Okay.
And the thing is, they'd still have to prove that the windows replacement of the windows was applicable, which is a difficulty for them, right? I mean, we'd
The
be
windows are
having
gone.
the same discussion
Yeah.
with different people, probably.
Yeah,
But the obstacle to approval now is we don't know.
Yeah.
There's 2 obstacles. One is they didn't do it in the right order in the first place. And 2, the application doesn't demonstrate that the windows were, that replacement was acceptable according to the guidelines.
Right,
Well,
and we've reviewed violations like these in the past with windows that didn't exactly match or weren't as good of a match as the majority of these windows are. And while they had commission review, those were approved, and this isn't to like give license to folks to just to replace with impunity without landmark review. But in the worst case scenario, like this is the best outcome for this property. They replace them matching it as closely as possible. maybe they didn't do it in the right order. Could have been for a lot of different reasons. They didn't know they needed a permit. They didn't know they needed landmark review, window replacement. There's a lot of reasons why this could have happened. But what we have to do is review the application that's in front of us now, and the commission has to make the determination as to whether or not they feel they can provide flexibility on 3 of those windows or 2 of those windows, and be supportive of the majority of them, or if this is a no-go for you all because it doesn't cleanly meet the guidelines.
I'd also like to share, based on our conversations about windows in general and updating these guidelines, the focus more was on matching profiles. There was some discussion about flexibility on operation type, if it's on a secondary facade. And the focus more was on preserving character windows, which this house has 1/1s, which we have, while we're still working and drafting that definition, we would likely not consider 1/1 a character window. So, you know, the guidelines may be different in less than a year. And not that you have to make the decision on future guidelines. I just want to remind the commission that these are ongoing conversations that we have, and it is likely gonna, we will likely have new guidelines in less than a year.
The windows that are already replaced are off the table. I mean, just as, you know, they shouldn't be eligible for the tax credit. Likewise, we shouldn't have to say you gotta replace them all because you replaced them without asking. So I think denial with a resubmittal for the projects they want to do going forward, and that's something we can discuss.
So the resubmittal being window
For the
11?
windows they yet have to replace.
So
It's
the-
only one window.
yeah, it's only the one window that they need to replace.
Aren't they in violation now?
They are in violation, so you
And
do
so they'd
need
have
to
to
make,
address the violation as well.
yeah, you do need to make a determination on what they're proposing today, which is aluminum clad wood windows, mostly double hung with 2 fixed windows on the interior elevation.
But we have the flexibility to do so. To
Based on the
based on
guidelines.
guidelines, we can decide that those are acceptable.
For the record, the official Denver Building Code also says that replacement of windows and doors with no structural alterations or change in size of opening for 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses is exempt. There's a footnote that says when it is a designated structure for preservation, a building permit and approval from the local preservation authority should be required. So the amendments to the code do state that. But I still think in this case, because the product that was replaced is exactly what the guidelines would require, that, can I try a motion here? And
I wish you would.
Please.
we'll see what
Please,
everybody
please,
thinks. So I would try this on the fly, but Madam Chair, I would move to approve application 2023-COA-214 for the replacement at 3229 West 23rd Avenue per design guideline 2.19 only with respect to replacement of historic windows. The character defining features for the Whittier Cofield Historic District, presented testimony and submitted documentation provided in the staff report with the condition that window 11 be resubmitted for staff review and approval if it is going to be replaced.
Graham, thank you for the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Nick has seconded the motion, so let's take a vote. All in favor of the motion as presented, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
All right, so there was 1 nay, it was George, for your records. All right, then, motion passes. The question passes, and the applicant will be in touch with you, Jesse, I'm sure, about window 11. All right, excellent. Design review projects are completed. Now we go on to business items. The first business item is 1660 Sherman Street, the Central Presbyterian Church, and the description is National Register nomination. And hello. Hi, Matt.
Can we pause for a second?
We have to pause for a second. That's our next,
I'll need you to read the
oh, I have to read this.
business item
I
process.
have to read the. share the correct screen. You're fine. All right, for those of you joining us virtually and here in person, the business item process is such. I will announce each business item on the agenda. The staff will introduce the business item and commissioners can question staff. Public comment period will be as the design review, so everybody that wants to comment will have 2 minutes per person. If you would like to speak regarding a specific project and you are not part of that applicant team, please click the hand raise button. For those calling via phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. If you are having difficulty with either hand raise option, email landmark@denvergov.org with name and phone number. The staff can clarify if necessary. The commission will deliberate, and the commission does need to make a motion and will vote. All right, now it's your turn. Thank you.
I'm here today to talk about Central Presbyterian Church, which is up for a National Register nomination amendment. Originally nominated in 1974 for its Romanesque revival styling, Criterion C, and prominence as a church in early Denver, this nomination for Central Presbyterian Church is an amendment to include additional information regarding the congregation's role in helping the Chinese community in Denver. Central Presbyterian Church is significant at the local level under Criterion A for Asian American ethnic heritage. From 1877 to 1919, a school teaching English and Bible studies operated out of Central Presbyterian Church buildings in the current church after construction in 1892, helping Chinese Americans gain language skills during a national wave of intense anti-Chinese sentiment. Majority of the church leadership and congregation during the time found discrimination against Chinese Americans abhorrent, with Pastor Dr. R.F. Coyle speaking out against the Chinese Exclusion Act by threatening to resign his post. While in the national minority, Central Presbyterian Church would serve as one of a few safe places for Chinese Americans to learn English and integrate into American life successfully. Eventually, the Chinese Exclusion Act proved to be effective in driving Chinese Americans out of the country, resulting in low enrollment and shuttering of the school in 1919. The structure at 1660 North Sherman Street is the last extant structure connected to the school.
Thank you. Questions for staff? All right, I don't think there are any questions for you. Shall we call for public comments on the project? Anyone here wish to comment? No? Okay, cool. I don't see any hands raised. Okay. All right, thank you. Questions for staff before we deliberate? All right.
Was there any indication in the amended nomination amendments about the number of Chinese that participated in this program over the time period?
They did include some records, but did indicate that it wasn't a complete list. Additionally, the church recorded the number of Japanese members that took the profession of faith, although no names were included. Dates associated with the individuals are included when documented. The list is not comprehensive or exhaustive and is difficult to require. I would guess that there's at least 60 people.
60?
60.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, great. All right, commissioners, what do you think? Don't everybody talk at the same time. Nick, okay, all right, do I hear, okay, cool. Do I hear a motion?
Sure.
Nick.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend that the National Register nomination for the Central Presbyterian Church at 1660 North Sherman Street be forwarded to the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places per presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Nick. Do I hear a second?
Second.
George has seconded it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right. There you go, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want me to sign it, I can sign it after the meeting.
Will do.
Becca's with us for our next business item, which is the National Register nomination for 25 East 16th Avenue, the Denver Central YMCA. Becca, take it off, take it away. Oh, we can't hear you.
Yep, thank you. And apologies, I can't be there in person today, but I'm happy to present two other National Register nominations for your review today as part of the History Colorado Heritage for All. So the one we'll be starting with first is a review of a National Register nomination amendment for the Downtown Denver Central YMCA building. The Downtown Denver Central YMCA is currently listed on the National Register of Historic Places under criterion A for its recreational and social history, with a period of significance of 1906 to 1954, and criterion C for its architecture. This building was the Denver YMCA headquarters beginning in 1906 and was part of the national organization's expansion of services to include dormitories and athletic facilities in the early 20th century. The building is also an example of early 20th century neoclassical revival style architecture, representing the work of Denver architectural firm Marion and Norton. This nomination amendment seeks to expand the area of significance for the National Register listing of the Central YMCA building to include the area of social history, LGBTQ+, for its association with Denver's queer community, particularly men seeking men. The updated period of significance would span from 1906 to 1974, which is 50 years from the present day, in keeping with the National Register periods of significance. As you'll recall, Denver goes to 30 years, National Register goes to 50 years. There are no boundary changes as a result of this amendment. By their intended purpose and design, YMCA recreation centers were located in urban areas to give young working class men access to recreational activities, dorms, and shower facilities. The concentration of young, often single men, combined with the discrete spaces, allowed men to seek out relationships with other men. For the majority of the 20th century, queer people could not openly seek relationships or companionship in the same manner that straight people could. So instead, they had to resort to anonymous spaces, covert relationships, and coded language. Across the country, YMCA centers were known to be a space where men could seek out the company of other men. The YMCA cheap dormitories hosted men from across the country, providing the potential for anonymous fleeting connections with travelers. And as Denver was a hub of military and other activity, there were many people coming and going and utilizing the YMCA as a place to stay as they're visiting. Furthermore, the downtown Denver YMCA's central location and proximity to Denver's neighborhood, now known as Capitol Hill and Uptown, made it a popular hangout for men seeking men, with nearby gay bars and nightlife, providing other opportunities for the queer community to come together. The downtown Denver Central YMCA is historically significant for Denver's gay community as a space for men to explore their sexuality without fear of being outed and without the need to commit to entering a dedicated gay space. It also introduced many men to the gay community, let them dip their toes in, and provided them connections to that wider community throughout Denver, in addition to the fleeting encounters they may have initially experienced. Therefore, Landmark staff is recommending that the amendment to the YMCA nomination be forwarded to the keeper.
Becca, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Becca? Nope. All right. Do we have any public comments? Anybody here? Okay, anybody online with us or virtually have a comment? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, then, all right. Becca, did you have anything else to say before we deliberate? Okay, cool. Let's deliberate. Commissioners, any thoughts? Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move to recommend that the National Register nomination amendment for the downtown Denver Central YMCA at 25 East 16th Avenue be forwarded to the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places per presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Graham, thank you. Do I hear a second? Nick has seconded it. Thank you, Nick. All in favor, aye? Any opposed, nay? All right, Becca, thank you very much. That will be, the amendment will be sent on. Now, yours is also the next project, 2350 Gilpin Street, which is the Mills House, which is another National Register nomination.
Yes, correct. And this one was written by our own commissioner, Erica Warcel. So it's a good thing she's not at today's meeting.
Uh-oh, she
She
had
has to
to
recuse herself. But it's a very excellent nomination, so everyone should
Of
do
course
a
it
thorough read. So this is the review of the National Register nomination for the J. Warner Mills House at 2350 North Gilpin Street. This home, constructed in 1892, is a late Victorian dwelling situated in Denver's Whittier neighborhood. Mills was the first occupant of this home. He was a lawyer and women's suffrage advocate. He was a particularly important male ally who not only supported the work of women within the suffragism, I'm so sorry. Suffragette movement, but he also directly worked alongside them by virtue of his legal skills. So although women's suffrage movement was led by women both nationally and in Colorado, male advocates who typically had better access to legal and political systems proved to be important allies in the decades-long struggle to obtain equal voting rights. J. Warner Mills was one such advocate who played a pivotal role in the state suffrage movement and spoke frequently and convincingly in support of women's suffrage prior to the November 1893 election in Colorado. Mills was the author of the 1893 legislative bill that enabled women to have full voting rights in Colorado. In addition to his work in women's suffrage, Mills was also a leader in Denver's prohibition movement, an outspoken and active proponent of legal reforms throughout his life, and a publisher of foundational reference books on Colorado law. In part through his activism, Colorado became the second state to guarantee women's suffrage and was the first state to do so through a statewide referendum, which required a majority vote by the state's all-male electorate. Throughout his career, Mills advocated for progressive reforms to Colorado labor, tax, and prison law, supporting women's rights, equal suffrage for all, regardless of sex, race, color, religion, education, property, and descent. And he also heartily opposed the death penalty. His house at 2350 Gilpin Street is the only extant resource related to his time advocating for the equal suffrage referendum. And therefore, Landmark staff recommends the nomination be forwarded to the keeper.
Okay, thank you. I have trouble saying suffragette too. It's a difficult word. Commissioners, do you have any, I'm sorry, I skipped public comments. Questions from it. I'm sorry, okay, I was right then. Okay, do you have any questions for Becca?
No.
Okay, great. Then let's go on to the public comment. Do we have anybody here in person that would like to comment? No? Okay. Do I see any hands raised? We do not. All right. Then let's move into deliberation. Commissioners, any thoughts?
Well, I have to say, I was delighted to hear that Erica wrote the application, because when I was reading it, I kept thinking, what would Erica think about?
What would Erica think? Well, as a matter of fact.
That this male person was actually being honored for the work that she talks about.
Yeah, it's a nice application, of course. Any other comments? All right, do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I can make a
Graham, go
motion.
for
I move
it.
to recommend that the National Register nomination for the J. Warner Mills House at 2350 North Gilpin Street be forwarded to the keeper of the National Register of Historic Places per presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Graham.
I'll second.
Anne has seconded it. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All righty, it will be forwarded. Thank you very much, Becca. So the next item on our business item agenda is Brittany's. It's the LPC chair and vice chair elections, yearly elections description.
So we have yearly elections for our chair and vice chair. Our current chair is Julie Johnson and our vice chair is Erica Warzel. We do normally do this in May. I do recognize this is an awkward time as Gary and Ann are leaving the commission.
Can we nominate them?
So we can cut them around.
I
nominate Gary.
I'd sit very low, Gary.
Julie is still eligible for one more year of the commission, and Erica's term is up in 2 more years. That's kind of where it is. I know it's a little awkward with Erica not being here, so we could table this and do this later. Or but we do normally do this in May, so that is why it is on the agenda today.
Would it make sense to do it the week of the 21st with more active commissioners here, just in case? Something like that.
Yeah, and do we know, Julie, are you interested in staying on?
I would be honored.
Okay.
Yeah, it
And
would be
then,
fun. for me
and
to
does
do.
anybody know Eric?
I haven't
Yeah,
talked to
I
Erica.
talked to Erica.
We could volunteer her, but
You
I
could.
think Larry, both Larry and Erica should be.
Voluntold.
You could volunteer. If they were to postpone it to May 21st, would they need to make a motion or we just postpone?
I think it would be best to deal with this item on the agenda one way or another, so postponement is appropriate.
Okay. So up to you if you wanna elect Julie now or, and then maybe Erica later, or we just postpone the whole item.
well, that works. We'll have a chair moving forward.
As long as I get to wear that cool outfit that she's got on the porch there. The hat especially.
It's a fascinator.
So what would we do then?
Well, you could move
Somebody
to
needs
elect
to
chair,
nominate
you,
the chair.
yeah, or you could move to postpone.
Do I hear a motion?
Noel,
Yeah, perhaps it's easier with once Eric is here. Are you planning on being able to attend the next few meetings, Julie?
As far as I know.
Shall I move to postpone until Erica is also back for conversation at a future meeting? May 21st, if possible.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, Gary has seconded it. All in favor of postponing till next meeting, May 21st? Is it
Aye.
21st?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Nay, no. Okay, just make sure I get that cool hat.
You can
My
keep it
best.
down.
Okay,
Sue
thanks.
is spelling a lot of her
Okay, discussion items, Brittany, is you talked to us about the Larimer Square street closure. There's no action taken on our part, but it'll be good to have some information.
The one thing I'd like to say before we jump in, is just that Spectrum has done a fair bit of work at Larimer Square, but we have not been part of any of the conversations around street closure. So
Okay,
I know the applicants will work together, but
thank you.
we haven't had any input, so no ex parte or conflict of interest that way.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting us know.
So this is just for an informational item. The property owners who own the entirety of Larimer Square, Asana Partners, are proposing to do a pilot street closure as part of Denver's Outdoor Places program. They applied for a full street closure on Larimer Square, which is between 14th and 15th, as you can see here. So there are some requirements that are necessary as part of a full street closure of a entire block, and that is that the applicants conduct a mobility study to understand transportation and safety impacts, conduct community outreach, and respond to feedback and receive neighborhood support. So this informational item before the commission is part of that community outreach. Prioritize accessibility for individuals of all ages and abilities, and better reflect the neighborhood character through design. And finally, provide street closure barricades that are flexible and decorative. So the applicant has been working with the team, which Landmark staff is a part of. Initially it was Abby, and then as she transitioned to the planning and regulatory team, I took over this project. But essentially this more permanent closure, which was kicked off by the COVID pandemic, which allowed for temporary closures, will incorporate a 20-foot clear fire lane. The existing curb and gutters will be maintained with new movable ADA ramps incorporated into the streets that are more uniform in design, and then patio railings that will be in the street and sidewalk bridging that space, creating larger patios. We do have purview over the railing, but we're not looking at the railings at this time, as each individual tenant will propose their own railing as they come forward, depending on if they have need of those or not. But again, this is just an informational item to provide some updates on the street closure that is proposed in Larimer Square, which is Denver's oldest and first historic district. And that's all I have.
Cool.
But the applicant is here and they have a presentation for you.
Oh, cool. I was wondering. You all have been so patient throughout the whole meeting.
Do you want me to go right here or? Yes.
Yeah, that'd be
And
great.
then I'm gonna turn on your camera too. I can't turn on the video, Eric.
See if you can do that.
And then I'll change the slides for you too. When you let me know.
So I'm Ashley McDonald. I'm with Asana Partners and have been leading the redevelopment efforts at Larimer Square. And so we've had a lot going on the block, and I'll give you guys a high level update of what we've been doing and where we're at, and then where we've been with the street closure process with the city and the various agencies, which really started upon our acquisition in December of 2020, when the street was already closed as part of COVID measures. So I'll head to the next slide. So yeah, I'll just talk through kind of a handful of items, starting with just a general project update to ground everybody on where we're at and what we've done, and then head through it from there. Next slide, please. So the block, we purchased it in December of 2020, and is comprised of 22 buildings. We've earmarked 18 of them for historic restoration, various forms of restoration. Not all of those were historic. And we've completed 17 of those 18 buildings. So if you've been to Larimer, you may have noticed scaffolding around the block for the past 2.5 years. We've been very busy doing lots of restoration work, and we're almost finished with the 18 buildings fronting the Larimer sides of the buildings. We do still have a little bit of work on the backs of the buildings, but have been prioritizing getting the right of way and pedestrian impacted areas done first. So we made a ton of progress, and we're sitting in a great position as the street closure dynamic has been a lot of push to make it permanent, and support for that. Tenants are reopening on the block, and construction is wrapping up in terms of the impactful items. So we're about 65% occupied right now. We've got signed leases that'll bring us to about 80% once those tenants get through their permitting process and open for business. And we are at lease with another 10%, which will bring us to 90%. So lots of good momentum following the completion of this work, and we're really excited about the trajectory of the block for the future here. So going into the street closure items on the next slide. I'll just show a few photos of kind of before after to ground as well. Not really street closure related, but stuff that we thought was interesting just to share. This is the Gallup Stanberry building, which when we acquired the building, netting was holding up pieces of stone that were falling off onto the sidewalk for safety purposes. And you can see the after version post renovation. So really beautiful work here, and the building looks great now. The next slide, some close-ups of the cornice at the Hope building and some before afters. This was one of the first buildings that we tackled. And then the next slide, the windows at the Barnum building on the block. So much of the windows across the block were in the condition you see here on the left. And so there's been a ton of work bringing these back and restoring them. So I recommend taking a look. The block looks great. In terms of the street closure approval process, we've been working through it since 2020. In November of 2022, the city started a pilot street closure program and earmarked Larimer for this pilot program, and have been outlining the steps and process as we go. And so right now, what we have highlighted in red is where we sit in that process. So as Brittany mentioned, we've had a number of meetings with various agencies to get to where we are. We have submitted a mobility study to Dottie, which is under review currently and is one of the final steps. And we had a community information meeting 2 weeks ago where we presented similar documents that you'll see here today, gathering input from the community on things that they like about the current layout, things that they'd like to see in terms of events and activations on the block. And it was really well received and interactive. We had about 80 people show up and got a lot of great ideas, and we're compiling feedback for a formal report and submission to the city. So that's where we're at. Assuming that goes well, we assume there'll be a few comments to our current layout that we'll need to update based on the feedback. We'll work to finalize that and hopefully have final approval for this pilot street closure program to move forward. The program is a pilot program, so everything is temporary in nature, and technically anything in the right of way, in the street right of way, needs to be removed within 48 hours. Our understanding is that it's a 5-year renewable process on an annual basis, and assuming everything goes well for a period of time, it would go to a formal city council adoption down the line after it's been in the pilot program for some time. So heading to the next slide. This slide illustrates the fire department requirements, which is really kind of the primary kind of design constraint we started with. We did go through a number of iterations with the fire department, working to try to get consideration to allow us to jog the street for a little bit more placemaking and variety. We did get some flexibility in that they'll allow encroachments into the 20-foot clear area as long as you can basically run them over. So that's kind of how we're going to create that variety in placemaking. So the lighter red is illustrative of those areas where there won't be permanent railings or anything of that nature. But theoretically, tenants, if they didn't have railings, could extend into that or have non-railed areas, or common area spaces will have activations with flexible seating. So to the next slide, we also worked through, considerations with accessibility was a big piece of how we were looking at it. The COVID closure came together in a hurry, and so while great, there were a lot of things that we saw improvement that could occur here. One being all these beautiful buildings, you kind of have to zigzag around tables and chairs to see them, they're blocked. What we're primarily doing is pulling everything away from the buildings and creating a clear path of travel. As we approached the design and thought process here, we looked at a lot of comparable streets and closed streets throughout the country and the world. And one of the common themes we've seen is just simplicity is really key. So in the flexibility among the tenants, as mentioned, we're not prescribing the types of rails that tenants need to have, and we want them to come in for individual reviews rather than prescribing it in a document here. But setting parameters around height and general basics to keep a guideline, but preserve individuality and have this come off as we happen to own the whole block, but we want it to come off as if it's a multiple building owners and not a mall or anything of that sort. Public space versus private space. I think I have a slide in here that kind of shows the delineation of the colors. If we go to the next one, maybe one more down. Oh, maybe I don't. Anyways, the balance between public space and private space. There's private restaurant areas in front of the restaurants, but public walking space along the buildings, and tons of areas for just communal seating for anybody that comes to the block. We're upgrading planter boxes that you see throughout the block. Some things that have occurred, there'll be new trash cans, planter boxes, tables and chairs and umbrellas, essentially, and kind of temporary removable stage within 48 hours that can serve as a sort of sounding board for the block, mid-block for events and activations. A big piece of keeping this all fluid is the flexibility for different events over time, needs changing over time, and that's really the gist of it. So to the next slide, which is just Q&A, what I wanted to provide here today was just an update of where we are, and get any feedback or comments that you guys may have in terms of things you think we should think about and incorporate as we go through the final stages of updating our design and layout based on community input.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I do, and this isn't necessarily my personal opinion. I think, you know, the street is a public place and amenities like you're proposing are a good idea. What I'm relating to is what another person I know who owns property in Lodell who made a comment about from a givings and takings perspective. In other words, some businesses get the benefit of using public space for their private use, and other businesses don't, depending on where they're located and where the city decides street closures or other kinds of development of public amenities occurs. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about a comment like that.
So the way we've laid it out is a certain area into the street depth by the frontage of each tenant's space. So it's really based on your frontage and then your choice to apply for it. That was kind of how we came up with it. We haven't set up private patios for people that don't have frontage or basement space, which it's just kind of a nature of the amount of space we have, and we wanted to maintain a substantial amount of public open space as
I
well.
think where this person was coming from was that where a private business can expand their business into the street, they're getting a benefit that another business, because of the nature of where they're located, would not be able to get even if they applied for it. And so it was, the person was looking at it as an equity kind of thing. And, you know, I think, you know, Larimer Square is a special place.
Yeah.
And the closure of the street would have presented traffic problems if the city didn't replace the bridge over the creek like they did. It's no longer really a two-way creek. So I'm just wondering what an owner's perspective is to comments like that, or maybe just it's something to be aware of. And as you develop the public realm, to be aware of both what ownership is getting versus what the public might be giving up. And I don't know in this case what the public is getting up, but it's just that concept. And that was the perspective this one person who's a business owner in Lodo brought up. And you know, it was the first time I heard that kind of perspective, and I thought it's a perspective worth discussion. Maybe not here, but you know, in public, with politicians probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I mean, when we take a step back and look at the street holistically, balance is really the key to everything. If it's all public space, people don't have a reason to be there. They're there gathering and hanging out in the restaurant space. Makes the public space more activated and kind of feeds off of each other. So from kind of a macro 10,000 foot look, we feel it's important to have both for it all to work. Otherwise, none of it really works.
Right.
But I do see the point, and you know, one of the things I would say is, you know, pre-COVID pandemic, there's been a number of patios out that encroach onto the sidewalks. And what this street closure is allowing us to do is really remove the congestion off the buildings and create just more of a clear line of travel. So I would say the patios are expanding and getting larger, and that is an equity consideration, most certainly. But our kind of look is we're improving the existing patios.
Most of those improvements are already in place, are they not?
They are, but what everything is right now is very, you have to zigzag around to get to businesses. It's not very intuitive, and it was just kind of thrown together really quickly. And So it's all about taking what's there and improving upon it, on all those things that are kind of lacking.
Any other comments? Okay,
Great, well, if
great.
anything comes to mind,
Thanks
feel
so
free to
much.
shoot us emails. We would love to hear it.
Great, thank you so much. Alrighty, Brittany, anything else for the good of the order?
That is it for today.
That is it for today. Okay, then I'm adjourning the meeting and it is 9 until 3 o'clock. So what's, yeah, have a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Barry and Ann, maybe we'll see you next time. Maybe we won't. Yes. And I was telling Gary, I have